Good afternoon, everybody. I've been asked to keep this short because I know we are running over slightly. So my name's Neil Marsden. I'm an independent damp and timber surveyor. I've been working as a surveyor for 38 years. I've carried out to date just under 39,000 surveys. So to say I've been around the block a few times would be an understatement. When I was contacted and asked if I would speak about damp and mould in buildings, I talk about it quite a lot. I actually teach it, yes? Right, I'll just move. Is that better? Is that better? To turn my volume down. Yeah, no problem. Is that better? Is that better? No? Yes? No, I've got half one. Yes? Right, is that any better? Perfect. So I'm talking about a subject which I can stand and talk about for hours, but I am going to keep it very short and sweet. We are entering the condensation season. This is the time of year now when condensation is going to be prevalent. Why? Because the temperatures overnight will drop into single figures. When they drop into single figures, people tend to keep the windows shut, and then the occupancy rates go up because people spend more time in front of the television or doing whatever they're doing on an evening. So we just entering the condensation season. I'm going to go through these slides. Am I going the right way? Yes. So damp and mould, as seen in the photographs below, is something that is receiving a great deal of airtime following recent events, particularly the case of Awab Ishak. I can't say too much about the Awab Ishak case because I actually had some involvement to some degree in what went on. And I have my own opinions about what went wrong and obviously the events that subsequently took place. But, the big thing that we're fearing is this. Tenants are ringing up saying they've got problems with mould. Now, out of in the best part of 40 years I've been surveying, I always say it's never something that the landlord alone can sort out or the tenant can sort out. It's usually a combination of both parties work together, and if they work together, they will reach an end resolution. But unfortunately, it's always assumed that the landlord is the bad person. When we're seeing this, I could talk about mould all day, how dangerous it is, how toxic it is, but in my overall opinion, I'll keep it in one sentence. I don't think for the average human being who's fit and healthy, it's not particularly dangerous. We're breathing the spores in as we speak now, but that's probably for another time. We see this, these are properties that are visited where the tenants have reported that they have defects. So you turn up and you see this mould, there's various moulds, and on the back of this, there's a huge industry has sprung up. We have mould remediation companies. I don't know if anybody's ever used them, where they'll come along and they'll treat the mould for you. And it's a huge business. I have a good insight into the business. I sit as a director in the Property Care Association. Well, I did until 4 weeks ago, and I'm trying to wind back in a step down. So you see this mould. The electricians have been in, they've done a rewire, they've moved the insulation material, and they didn't bother putting it back. So now we've got cold spots on the ceiling, warm air meets cold surfaces, we get condensation. The result of that is distilled water, and then the result of that is mould spores in the atmosphere will start to germinate. So condensation is becoming an increasing problem in new and old properties. We've got an old housing stock and we haven't quite worked out how we make that work at this time now. We're trying to use Victorian houses and make them suit obviously our lifestyles as it is. So there's been significant increases in mould related issues. At my company, Neil Marsden Associates, we've seen requests year on year increases 400%. I act as an expert witness. I have acted for and against landlords. And basically, I am not taking any more on because the demand is massive. And unfortunately, the landlords are particularly on the receiving end of it. So really what I wanted to talk about today was the new legislation that will be coming our way in the very near future because the government have said it is a priority. The timeline for extending Awab's law has not been confirmed, but they have said it is a high priority on their agenda, and it will happen sooner rather than later. So what does it mean? Sorry. And for some reason, it's not changing. There you are. Sorry, Bruce. I just wanted to see if you were still awake. So the aim of the law introduced in 2022 was to improve living conditions and protect tenants' rights by making landlords more accountable for damp and mould in social housing. So, to be fair, I've been around a long time, and I have seen bad landlords. I've seen bad housing associations, local authorities, but I've seen lots of very, very good people in in that type of industry who are trying to do the best. Private landlords were not included in the first draft of legislation that came out. However, the new government have reiterated that the legislation will be extended to include private landlords under the new Renters' Rights Bill, which demands that landlords and their agents be required to address mould and damp conditions within 24 hours of the tenant reporting the mould issues. Can we do that? You know, to be honest, via the PCA and sitting as a board member, we have spoken at government level many times about different things, and they live in a different land to everybody else. We try to explain to them this was not feasible. Your tenant reports mould, you have to respond within 24 hours. It can't be done. It's an absolute impossibility. So we have 24 hours to respond and carry out emergency repairs. Invariably what's happening, a lot of companies are going to the mould remediation companies. The social housing providers, they're employing these companies who will go out and treat the walls with all types of chemicals. And it's an absolute waste of time, but they're doing it because it ticks a box to say that they have actually done something. But it doesn't achieve anything. So following on from that, following the emergency repairs, the landlord then has 2 weeks to fully investigate and begin repairs within the future 7 days. So the time frame from being notified to actually carrying out the repairs is, you're shaking your head. What do you think? Yeah, I absolutely agree. I absolutely agree. You know, there was a document came out by the Property Care Association, or ICS, in historic England. They produced a document called the Joint Position Statement. Came out in 2022, and that encourages surveyors to take a staged approach. Deal with the predominant source of the damp, then we look at it, then we go back and deal with the next stage, and then the government come in and say, no, we just want it sorted. So it doesn't make any sense at all. But I do a lot of work with social housing. I work with housing associations, obviously local authorities. The demand, I was talking to some friends that I met earlier on. I do training externally. I'm not touting for training, yeah, but I'm booked up till the end of December 2025. People are trying to, especially the housing associations, local authorities. Why? Because they're trying to upskill their technical officers because they're panicking. I've seen firsthand what it's doing in the social landlord sector, and the fact that it's now coming your way. So simply cleaning the mould is not a solution. Getting these mould remediation companies, please do not be tempted to do it. They'll come along, they'll spray the wall with a load of chemicals. Invariably, very quickly, I'm not going into the technicalities, they're spraying it with normally a chloride-based product, chlorine, bleach. And they'll get away with it, they'll treat it 3 or 4 times, and then you'll actually develop a bigger problem because they're loading the wall plaster with hygroscopic salts, and then we get a whole new problem develops the more that they continue to clean the walls. And this is exactly what the social landlords have found. It's putting a sticky plaster over a problem. It doesn't solve it, it creates problems further down the line. The only way you're going to address this is identify the cause of the condensation, take measures to reduce the production of moisture, and it will lead to a long-term solution. I find the biggest thing, I think a lot of clients employ me because when I go there, I'm not going in to point the finger at the tenant and tell them get the windows open. I've seen it so many times when the landlord has accompanied me, and I confirm it's condensation. And then the landlord's, look, get your windows open. I've told you. I've driven past your house 6 times. You've never had your window open. And I'm standing there looking, saying it's -6. You want them to open the windows. You know, it's not the solution. The confrontation doesn't work. It has to be, you know, a collaborative agreement between the landlord and the tenant. And if you educate the tenant, I find they pretty much stick on board with it. So following the emergency repairs, the landlord has 2 weeks to fully investigate the issues and begin repairs within your 7 days. If you try to book me, I'm booked up 13 weeks in advance at the minute. So again, I'm not touting for work. I don't know where you're going to find these surveyors who can go in and do that. But one thing I would say is please do not employ the local damp-proofing contractor. There's some really good ones who do free surveys. Find yourself a good surveyor, a professional surveyor who understands condensation-related issues and can carry out a proper survey. Just getting the local damp-proofing contractor in to do a few little bits and bobs isn't going to work. It's just going to delay the result. A failure to meet the deadlines leaves the landlords liable to legal action by tenants and having to pay compensation. The landlord must retain records showing that they have made attempts to comply with the time frame. It is all stacked in the tenant's favour. I was asked, I'll not point to the person in the room, said, well, you know, the thing is, it's usually lifestyle, it's a tenant's lifestyle. We can't say that anymore. We have been specifically told we cannot see it as tenant's lifestyle. When really, we all know it partially may be. But unfortunately, we can't see it, so we have to be particularly careful. Am I going backwards? Yep. So what's next? Private landlords should brace themselves for an onslaught of no-win, no-fee solicitors. Now, I was at a conference last week and I was talking to an organisation who specialise in that field. And they're absolutely lining themselves up. You know, they see the private landlords now as it's going to be open hunting season. Unfortunately, I really didn't want to do this talk because I wanted to come and talk about something nice and smiley and all the rest of it. But after having seen what's happened in the social sector, you know, I've got to be honest, there's a plethora of claims farmers queuing up to capitalise on new legislation. Unfortunately, the private landlords are right in their sights. They've openly admitted it. The solicitors have said that they see this as a big opportunity to obviously, you know, big income stream. So you're probably going to be subjected to the unscrupulous practices that have been witnessed in social housing sector. I've worked this. I tell you, it was Bolton. Bolton at home. It's a big housing association. They have had a problem where the claims farmers, Bolton at home have the distinct. They have a blue fleece with a logo on it, and then they have the trousers all the same colour. They've got people knocking on doors with matching uniforms. And then they'll just say, you know, we were just passing, we noticed but your property, have you had any problems with damp? And they say, yes. Funny enough, we have. Do you want us to take a look at it while we're here? They think they're dealing with the housing provider. And then once they've seen it, they'll say, you know, we can probably get you some compensation for that. You know, if you can sign the paperwork, we'll just get straight on with it. And they've been battered, absolutely battered. But this is unfortunately what goes on in life. So what I would advise is, you know, we are hitting condensation season. In the next few weeks, that's when your tenants are going to be ringing up and reporting that they've got problems with condensation. My best advice I can give you, if you know of a property where you have existing problems, be proactive before you get to that stage. You know, the big thing is heating and ventilation. If you can balance the heating and ventilation, you give yourself a real shot at sorting this out. The one thing I did some for Newcastle City Council not long since, they had some issues, and they kept the tenants weren't happy. You know, the tenants were saying we're doing everything we can. The problem in the properties was the heating system wasn't fit for purpose. I walked in and I said the radiators are all undersized, and I did the calculations. They were miles out. So you can't tell the tenant that they need to keep an even if only moderate temperature if they've got no hope in hell of ever getting that temperature in the first place. So, you know, bring in people, qualified people, heating engineer, get them to assess the heating system. Is it at the right level where we can maintain an even if only moderate temperature? When you're putting your fans in, bring people in who understand what they do, not just the local handy person who can come in and stick a fan and hope for the best. I test fans when I go out. If I'm investigating a claim, I will test the fans to see what the extraction rates. 9 times out of 10, the extraction rates are nowhere near what is required in the British standards, approved document Part F. So get good advice. You know, find yourself a good surveyor, somebody who's keyed up on it and who's prepared to put the work in and do a full assessment. And if you do that, you're going to give yourself every shot of avoiding what is coming your way. And with that, I'm going to say thank you, because I do keep it short and sweet.